Hey guys, welcome back. I think this lesson is going to be pretty unique because we're not necessarily going to be digging into the philosophical foundations of a particular concept, but we're going to be actually challenging whether one of the founding members of Western philosophy and how we construct our logic was wrong. It was wrong in the final acts prior to his death. So we're going to be exploring the work of Plato called Crito. And what this is an account of Crito, a lifelong friend of Socrates, here in the last couple days before Socrates is to die. And what Crito is trying to do is convince Socrates that he has a duty to stand up for what he has created throughout his life, as well as personal responsibilities to his family. And this actually does not persuade Socrates. He has actually really amazing arguments that even in our day, even though we may not agree with all the things he remained for, that we can certainly appreciate that his arguments do seem sound and well founded. But it's difficult to say whether the the question of if Socrates was wrong is more because of the times that we live in or because of some corruption and thought then, or is it more likely that we have a corruption of thought in how we perceive virtues and justice, as well as our commitment to uh, country and family? So we're going to dive right on in. We begin at right after sunrise. Crito gets there before Socrates is awake. We are inside the jail cell where Socrates is being held. So eventually Socrates wakes up. Crito's already there watching him. And he says, like, I didn't know you were here. And he says, well, you just sleep so peacefully, which is really creepy, but I guess it's, different time, different manners, right? So eventually they get talking, and Socrates says, well, why are you here so early? And Crito says, well, so me and the guys, we have enough money to pay off the guards. We can get you safe passage out of Athens, and you can avoid this unjust verdict for your death from the Athenian justice system. And what's kind of amazing is that Socrates doesn't immediately jump on this. Socrates says, well, hold on, yes, I was wronged by what the judicial system is, but we can't answer a wrong with a wrong. When we answer a wrong with a wrong, that's only going to corrupt us. It doesn't do anything in addition to the person doing the wrong. They're going to have their own uh, bill to pay there in the future. But as a lifelong friend, I suppose you're privy to being saying some offensive things to your friend. But he said, Socrates, I don't think you are undertaking a right thing by throwing yourself away when you can be free. He says, I think you're betraying your own sons, and that you seem to be choosing the easiest way out. Well, and which is like the easy way is dying. Bizarre. But what's Crito trying to communicate to him? He's saying, excuse me, you have a chance to be free, and you have a chance to continue to not only be available for your friends, but also your children, who he says very likely in this circumstance will be considered orphans, and then will not have any of the benefits of education or having a father available to be able to raise them as a good Athenian. And talk about laying it on thick. He's really trying. And then he also argues, and if you stay here, when you have the chance to leave, how is this type of death going to reflect well on the life that you lived? And he's not trying to say that it's like bad publicity on him personally, particularly. He's trying to say, Socrates, your whole life you tried to say that the good life is one that's lived with virtue. That's one where your inner compass is aimed in the right direction for purity, justice, virtue, and so forth, temperance. Wouldn't this show by you being unjustly put to death that actually all those all that work in order to accumulate virtue and to have a good life is kind of not going to be too terribly persuasive in the future when they realize that you were killed unjustly. And that doesn't seem like a good selling point for the good life, for this philosophy that you've been pressing for 70 years. So it's a pretty compelling arguments, if you ask me. I would certainly not be as prepared for a rebuttal as Socrates, but of course, who would be? So Socrates, what he's going to respond to is, well, hold on. He's really going to catch on to the lowest hanging fruit first. He's going to say, Crito, we really shouldn't be carried away with what people think. We really, because what do the people know? We're not really interested in that. And he says, well, Crito's like, well, I think they know some things, and I think they, as a majority, they have they could probably lead us to do the right things. And so Socrates gives an idea. He begins beforehand by saying, like, listen, Crito, I understand your anxiety and your disposition to try to persuade me in this, but my way is, this is Socrates speaking, my way is, and always has been, to obey no one and nothing except the reasoning which seems to me best when I draw my conclusions. So he's beginning this argument with saying that I'm not going to be persuaded by you per se, nor am I going to be persuaded by my emotions or what will be popular or what most people would do. I'm going to be persuaded by the logic and reasoning of the conclusions of these arguments we're about to embark on. So Crito is going to have an opportunity to persuade Socrates, but only insofar as his argument will be able to trump his. So to be able to counter what Crito said about the majority being able to have a fairly good idea, which is when popularized by the democratic system there in Athens, but as well in democratic republics like we have throughout the world. It's the idea that the country will be led more or less on the right track as long as everybody is able to put their brains together to make these decisions. And so Socrates wants to ask, now, when you go to a horse race and the chariots are going around, are you going to listen to the instructions from the people generally that are in the stands, or are you going to listen to the trainer and listen to his instructions and being able to complete this race successfully? Probably reluctantly, Crito said, well, they do have some good ideas. He's like, but would you listen to the trainer? He's like, yeah, I that would make the most sense. You want to listen to a trainer. He says, well, why would you want to listen to a trainer? He says, well, because he's knowledgeable and he knows better than the people in the stands. He says, well, then should we be blamed if we were to then select to follow after those who are knowledgeable in the virtues, in logic and reason, which we can all agree is not the general public? And Crito reluctantly says, I get it. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's probably not how we can come to the conclusion of what's correct. So, needless to say, Crito is still not entirely convinced, because let's remember, Crito came to Socrates to try to save Socrates. And here, Socrates, doors open to the cell, he's sitting there and he's like, no, I'm not going. And you got to talk me into doing it. I cannot imagine how frustrating that would be for Crito to be like, dude, I'm trying to freaking save you, and there's nothing keeping you from going out this door. What are you doing? And so anywho, so I cannot imagine how frustrating that would be. If I had hair, I'd be ripping it out. And so the next phase of the argument is one that's very popularized, and it's going to actually kind of change the conversation a little bit between Socrates and Crito, because up to this point, we've been pretty personal to Socrates and to what it means in his personal life. And he's going to move more into the idea of duty, and not just duty to yourself and your personal commitment, but the duty you have to the nation that you up to this point have supported been and have been the recipient of many good things. So what Socrates does is he's going to make a thought experiment where, let's say I go out that door with you, Crito, and we're going on our way out, and then we're going to imagine that this entity who is the laws of the Commonwealth. So he's going to personify the laws of the Commonwealth there in Athens, standing in the way, and they're going to start grilling Socrates about the justification he has to do this. So this is how they start. They say, "Tell me, Socrates, what have you in mind to do? And trying to do this, which is escape, can't you see that you are trying to destroy us, the laws and the whole state as far as you can do it? Do you think it possible that a city can exist and not be overturned, where sentences have no force, but are made null by private persons?" That, I mean, really good argument. And for some of us, we may not have as close of a kinship to our nation. It's we have this level of patriotism, or some may call nationalism, that appears to have a strong devotion to the nation that you're residing in. And so the question is, and this is what they will bring up as well, that the laws, they're saying, we have been the vehicle in which you have been able to be born in, that your parents were taken care of and raised in. We have been the vehicle in which we have protected you, and we have given you knowledge and the opportunity to access more knowledge, to have these debates, to live out your life exactly as you wanted for 70 years. And you were not forced to stay here. If you did not like the education, you can take yourself out. If you didn't like the way that the laws were being played, well, then find another residence outside of them. There was nothing keeping you or chaining you to the ground here in Athens. You had a chance to leave. And for 70 years, you lived under our laws, under our rules. And so now he's going to go into a John Locke. That's where it was getting in my head before. Now he's going to go into a very strong John Locke argument of the social contract, but like super strong social contract idea. And he said, and he's going to say, what are your justifications for taking all these good things that we have been given to you, and then as soon as a judgment, as soon as something bad happens to you and you're now going to have to take the consequences of it, now all of a sudden we got problems all over the place. As soon as you have it's the classic thing where others have been saying, no, let's say there's a strong political group and they're persecuting certain minorities, and say, first they went for these minorities, then they went for these, and they went for these, and I said nothing, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to protect me. And so let's take this back to now Socrates' circumstance. Who knows what kind of judgments have been going on for those 70 years. I can assume that there have been certain episodes in which there seemed to be a lapse in justice being served within a court. And yet, in spite of that, Socrates continues to stay there in Athens. And so then, as soon as now that Socrates is in that conundrum, now he has a problem, and he thinks that there's something wrong with the laws and the systems. And you have to wonder, okay, well, has this change of perspective only occurred because it's happened to him? You can't help but think that the timing of this change of opinion kind of strange when as soon as it happens that you get a verdict not in your favor. And so and this is what the laws play on. He says, you haven't had a problem with this forever. And now that you seem to have something not go your way, suddenly you want to destroy us. You want to show through your escape that the justice and laws of Athens is wrong, and it just does not seem to be very consistent with what you've been saying this whole time about integrity, Socrates. And then he brings up a few other arguments. I want to kind of go over some of the things that this entity of the laws brings up that it's really fascinating for discussions. And so one of the things he says, so we personify the laws in the Commonwealth, and the laws brought up the point that, one, we're not on equal footing here. Like, you are a citizen and we are the nation. And so when you think you've been wronged, that doesn't mean that you can do an equal amount of damage to the state, because that's not what level we're on. The state is a collection of the citizens. It is not just you. The state and its value and its perspective is so much higher and so much more important because it's interconnected with all these other lives in this nation. What right have you to do to try to undermine this entity that is supporting everyone else and that you've been a part of for 70 years as a single citizen who've been wronged this one time and now feels like everything's against them? What right have you have? You are not on equal footing with the state. But when we say the government is not doing this or the government is doing that, when we say government, I guess it's just a short name for the people. The thought is that I want to drive home is that our governments are not these entities. They're not the buildings. They're not the pillars. They're not a bunch of laws and books. They're the people that carry that out and that carry through the procedures that we refer to as the government. And so when you consider that you have all these people working together on this thing, and then you have this one individual who is saying, hey, this isn't right, this isn't wrong, then you're wondering, well, all these other people here in this, what we're referring to as the government, all these other people have rights too. All these other people have been creating this entity that up to this point, we're all in agreement that is right and going generally the right direction. And you got this one little guy who's saying, I don't like it, I want to destroy the whole thing. You have to wonder if that is a valid position in which to give your arguments. And so it's a image that I've never had prior to speaking with I live these things prior to reading Crito, because it does show the citizen as a disadvantage, but it also gives a really interesting discussion about when you can have civil disobedience. But this is Socrates really cutting under any of the logical or reasonable justifications for that civil disobedience. And so, interesting thought. I don't have an answer for it. If you do, give me a comment. I'd love to see your perspective. If maybe Socrates was wrong on that, or maybe he was right to bring up that kind of imagery and to say that, speaking through the mouth of the laws, that he doesn't really have a place to be able to make that argument. So after that, he also brings up another point that I felt was really intriguing. And so then I'll just be real brief about this because I know you're all probably bored out of your minds and just want to move on to the next thing. But the next thing that the law says is that we have ruled in the laws that you cannot do violence to your mom and dad. Like, you cannot do violence against your own parents. We agree here in America, where I'm placed, that domestic violence or violence that in the house is not appropriate, is not okay. You can't batter around anyone without having legal repercussions to it. And so then the laws say, you're not allowed to do those things in your own house. What right had to do violence to them? What right have you to do violence to us, the state, made up of all these people? What right have you to beat around the state when we are all in agreement that you can't even beat around your own kid, and it's just like, wow. A good argument. Like, unfortunately, if I'm sure, like, I don't know. For me, I'd have this little voice saying, like, stop thinking so much. You're going to keep yourself in this cell and get yourself killed. But hey, Socrates keeps talking, and he's not getting to an argument that's going to give you to a good conclusion so far. So we're really rooting for Crito. And then the last one is the biggest, and then we'll go on. Let's give you this. Yes, your conviction was unjust. They said that you were corrupting the youth, that you were you were leading people astray. Don't you realize that as soon as you leave, that as soon as you flee from the justice and the conviction that this is the right thing to do, that you have proven them right, that you've shown that you are a corrupter, that you are willing to go against your own principles in order to get out of something that you don't agree with? Do you realize that as soon as you were to take that hand, you would nullify everything that you ever lived for? You would prove that you were a corrupter because you were a liar this entire time, and that the judgment put it on you was the right one. That is like, woo, catch 22. Like, I stay because it's unjust and I'm going to get killed by it. But if I try to get out of this unjust conviction, I suddenly prove that it was a just conviction, because now I'm just proving their point that I'm a corrupter of the kids. And that's such a, oh my goodness, I can't get out of it. Like, how do you save a fellow who's arguing this way? And so you get to this point where, well, I'm going to tell you, Crito doesn't have a good answer, because at the very end, Socrates is like, listen, hey, did I say something wrong? Are you going to tell me I did something wrong? And Crito's like, no, I got nothing. I got nothing. So I can only imagine afterwards they're just sitting in silence, and just waiting for the ship to come into harbor. Like, what else is there to say? What else is there to do? So now I'm going to bring it into the modern day. We're now fast forwarding 2,500 years, and we're here now. So what is the answer that you would have if you were sitting in that cell? Now, I know for myself, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm getting out of there. If I get a chance to leave, like, okay, bad publicity, but if I was to take that hand, what am I communicating through that action regarding the value of virtue? The final thing that Socrates said, or he said, the good life is the one not contradicted by death. It's a crazy paradox, especially the one about the unjust turning into a just verdict should he leave. It's a very interesting discussion. I don't feel like that's the right choice, but because I don't put as much weight on the logic, and as a what I may call myself a philosopher, that I love the logic and the reasoning, and there's so many things I say I don't know because I can't get there with the logic or reasoning, but it's pragmatic. Whereas Socrates seems to be taking an extreme of saying, if it's not logical and rational, or reasonable, then I'm not going to follow after it. It could very well be rational to lead out that door, to take care of your family and your friends, but it was not convincing to Socrates. And I wonder if you would have left as well. Either way, I want to know what your thoughts are, because this is something that's really interesting to me. I love hearing your ideas. And so leave a comment, subscribe, and just, I also do tutoring on the side. So if you're interested in learning more, look at my other look at my other videos. And, I love seeing y'all here, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.